This morning we asked the question from John chapter 1, if you would turn back with me to John chapter 1. It was a poignant question to John the Baptist, but perhaps more of a rhetorical one for you and me. Verse 19 beginning, and this is the testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I'm not." "Are you the prophet?" He said, "No." So they said to them, "Who are you?" "We need to give an answer to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" That is the rhetorical question for us that we are called to answer for ourselves. Who are we? And more important, what do we have to say about ourselves? Or more to the point, what do our lives say about us? And we talked about at length the fact that our approach to life should be forward looking and not backward looking. That we should understand that 100% of the rest of our lives lie ahead of us. And what is gone before is gone. Tonight, though, we want to emphasize part of that approach. And that is, we cannot deny, nor can we forget the past, because the past does frame the present. But we have many components of that past, and it's God's will, I do believe, that we remember the good and forget the bad. That every person has a focus on their past. And some people focus on the bad things that have happened to them, the mistakes they've made, and the sins they've committed. But we will see that, biblically speaking, we should remember the past to help us in the present, to propel us into the future by what is good there, what is profitable there, what is restorative there. And tonight we want to talk about the restoration. No, not that restoration. An ancient restoration. If you'll turn with me to the 7th chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. The 7th chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. Now, I want to give you just a little bit of background. The last verse of the book of Judges, you recall, says that in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. And the book of 1 Samuel takes us into that mindset, and it has brought nothing but chaos and destruction to Israel. In fact, she's found herself subjugated to the Philistines. While the people of God, in their wayward and bizarre way of thinking, decided that it would be a good idea to take the Ark of the Covenant into battle with the Philistines as some of what we would call today a good luck charm. And they believed that since they could take God with them in this box, then they would be victorious. Well, quite the opposite happened. They were totally defeated. And the Ark of the Covenant of God and the people of Israel was taken into possession by the Philistines and paraded around as a war prize. But everywhere the ark went, people became sick and died. And so the Philistine says, we're going to give this back to the Israelites. Well, they put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart and sent it back to Israel without any men on it. They just sent it back. And the Israelites took possession of it again, but it wasn't of a good way. If you look at the previous chapter, 1 Samuel 6, verse 19 beginning, and he struck some of the men of Beth Shemesh, because why? They looked upon the ark of the Lord. He struck 70 men of them. And the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with a great blow. Then the men of Beth Shemesh said, who is able to stand before the Lord, his holy God? And to whom shall he go away from us? So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim, saying, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. And that's where we are in verse 1 of chapter 7. And we want to focus our thoughts tonight on chapter 7 to better frame in our minds what we need to remember to propel us in the present and into the future. And the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of the Lord. From that day, the ark was lodged at Kiriath Jearim. A long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented before the Lord. And Samuel said to all the house of Israel, if you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you, and direct your heart to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. So the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and they served the Lord only. Then Samuel said, gather all Israel at Mizpah. I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at Mizpah, and drew water, and poured it out before the Lord, and fasted on that day, and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the people of Israel at Mizpah. Now when the Philistines heard that the people of Israel had gathered at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the people of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. And the people of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines. So Samuel took a nursing lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. And Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. As Samuel was offering up the burnt offering to the Philistines, drew near to attack Israel. But the Lord thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion. They were defeated before Israel. And the men of Israel went out from Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them as far as below Beth-kar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin, and called its name Ebenezer. For he said, till now the Lord has helped us. So the Philistines were subdued and did not again enter the territory of Israel. And the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. The cities that the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron to Gath. And Israel delivered their territory from the hand of the Philistines. There was peace also between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. And he went on a circuit year by year to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah. And he judged Israel in all these places. Then he would return to Ramah, for his home was there. And there also he judged Israel. And he built there an altar to the Lord. We want to focus on this word, this name, this mighty term, Ebenezer. Ebenezer means stone of help. On the day that Israel was restored to God, God delivered his people from the hand of their enemies. Samuel raised up a stone of remembrance. Remember here, remember in this place, on this day, God restored his people to himself and helped them defeat their enemies. So that in future years, it would be remembered what happened at that place and that time. And to emphasize this point, I want us to sing a verse of a song. Number 420, if you'll turn in your books, number 420. There's a book or a song that is called O Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And there's a verse in it that for years, I can't speak for you, but for me, for years I sang this verse, had no idea what I was singing. But we just read the meaning of the song and the verse. We want to read, or rather sing, verse 2 of number 420, O Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. You see, we raise our own Ebenezers. Are they to commemorate in our mind those things that are good and profitable and helpful? Or do we raise a stone of remembrance to remember all the evil and the sin and the failures? Either way, we're going to raise those Ebenezers. And it is good that we raise Ebenezers to the blessings of God in our lives. As did Samuel, he raised a stone of remembrance of help. Remember on this day, when you look at this stone, that God restored you to himself. and saved you from his enemies, so that in the future they would remember why the stone was there. Why was it there? To remind them on this day and this time God helped Israel. It is so important that when we set aside those encumbrances that hold us back, those sins in the past that hold us back, those failures in the past that hold us back, that we remember what God has done. One such remembrance must be our baptism. When we remember our baptism, what do we remember? We remember the day that God reconciled himself back to us through Jesus Christ. A restoration, if you please. Ebenezer was a very popular name until the 1850s. After the 1850s, nobody named their children Ebenezer anymore. You know why?
A Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol. Charles Dickens destroyed a good name. After the Christmas Carol, people didn't name their children Ebenezer, but they did name many children Ebenezer before that. If you are familiar with your own ancestry in the 18th and 19th centuries, you have Ebenezers in your family tree. Very, very common name. As I may have shared on many occasions, my 5-time great uncle, who died at the Battle of Hanging Rock on the 6th of August, 1780, right down here in South Carolina, his name was Ebenezer, Ebenezer Gaston. Stone of Help. Stone of Help. That name became a living, breathing remembrance of God's help. And people knew what Ebenezer meant. And every time anyone by the name of Ebenezer came, they didn't remember a crotchety old greedy man in England. They remembered when God helped his people, and that he is still there helping his people. And we need to remember it. And people would walk around literally reminding people that God is a God of help. Raising Ebenezers. Raising stones to remind us of the help of God. Raising stones to remind us how God has, in our past, blessed us, saved us, and restored himself to us, just as he did the people of Israel on this occasion in 1 Samuel 7. Successful lives are lives that remember those who've gone before and the blessings that they wrought in their lives. We've lost a lot as we've gained a lot in our culture. We have gained better health and longer lives. But what we have lost is a memory of many a good person in the past that has helped us in many ways. We have sanitized death and dying and parting of the ways. In our not too distant past, death and dying focused on this concept of remembrance of the good that people had done in their lives. And they did not run away from it. They did not sanitize it. They did not avoid it. They did not sweep it under the rug, as it were. They embraced it totally. Death was experienced communally. It was a time of intense and deep fellowship. In the not too distant past, when someone died, preparations for their burial began in earnest. It was a family, friend, and congregational mutual effort to memorialize the life that had just passed. People participated together. A group of men would immediately begin construction on a wooden box. This was one of the first things that happened because there were no funeral homes. There was no bodily preparation. And what the custom was that the box would be prepared. And while the box was being prepared, the ladies would sew a shroud for the body. And then the body would be placed in the box and set up in the parlor of the house. If you read obituaries from the 19th century, you will see at the end funeral services at the home. We call them wakes. But people were buried very quickly. Now, while some men built the casket and some women sewed the shroud on, other men, usually family members, friends, congregants, would go and physically dig the grave, pick an axe. It was hard work. Every swing of the pick and every load of dirt with the shovel, people were constantly a reminder of the one who has been passed. And then there would be a time of family gathering, communal food, fellowship, remembrance of the one that's passed. And then after the funeral, in the house where the person had lived, it would be carried out to a resting place that had been built and dug by friends and family. And it would be lowered with ropes After words were said, and then each and every person in attendance would take a handful of dirt and walk by the grave, throw dirt onto the casket. A sort of a final reminder of a life that's passed. Then the men would shovel the remaining dirt onto the grave. And then there would be erected an Ebenezer, stone of remembrance. And people did not deal with death then as they do now, because even in what today we call graveyards, cemeteries, they had a different purpose in the 19th century. I don't know if any of you have ever visited Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond. Very beautiful place. In the 19th century, when it was built, it was out of town. Very beautiful place. And what would happen? On Sunday afternoons, since there were no parks per se in those days, people would, after church, load up a picnic lunch and go to the cemetery and sit around the tombstones, the Ebenezers of their deceased family members, and enjoy fellowship, as it were, once again with their deceased loved ones. There was this constant connection between the living and the dead. Why? Because it's important that we remember the good things that have gone before. And the more important they are, the more urgent it is, they are to be remembered. In this case, the restoration of the nation to God came as miraculous help and to assist the people of Israel. Samuel raised this stone, this monument, this memorial, to remind the people what had happened here so that they would not forget the restoration of God. Sadly, they did. But we need to raise our own Ebenezers, our own reminders of God's help in our past, especially our baptisms. Because it was a stark difference between the past and the future. Everything changed for the good. These are the things that we remember, or should remember, the blessings of the past, especially spiritual blessings, and especially people who are now gone that contributed in a powerful way to who we are today, so that we can answer the question, who are you? And answer the question, what are you all about? We are about the future, the resurrection of the dead. But we're also people of the past, recalling the times that God helped us. And there are many. Let us choose to remember God's help and raise up Ebenezers among us. Reconnect to the people and the events of our past that shaped us into the people that we are today. Because the good influences of events and people caused us to be helped by God as we embraced the salvation of Jesus Christ. Tonight, if you have any need before God, won't you come while we stand and sing to encourage you?
Request your broken life, so